What's up, everyone? Checking this video out. Thank you. Wherever you're watching it from, YouTube or Twitter, thanks for checking this out. This video I'm doing right now is about 1987, the year in the WWF and the NWA. I will be talking about the WWF and the NWA only. I know that the AWA was still around in '87, and WCCW, the Texas Von Erich promotion, was still around in '87, but that video talking about four promotions would just take way too long, and it'd be like 4 parts just to talk about all those 4 companies. It'd be like 4 different parts, and I don't want to do a 4-part video on 1 year. So I'm going to just talk about the WWF and the NWA, the main companies in '87 that I watched. Well, I didn't watch the NWA in '87, but I've seen all their big events. In the later on, years later, I saw the NWA from '87, Great American Bash's events I own, and Starrcade '87 I own on DVD. So I checked out a lot of NWA '87 when I was a teenager. I rented a lot of NWA videos, so I saw a lot of NWA in '87. But in the year '87, I was only 3.5 years old, so I didn't see NWA. I only watched WWF. And even though I watched when I was 3 and 3.5 in '87, and then I turned 4 in July of '87. But anyways, even though I watched, I didn't see WrestleMania 3 live. I didn't go to someone's house and see it on pay-per-view. I didn't have cable at the time, and I just saw WWF Superstars and some Saturday night main events, and I went to a WWF house show in '87 when I was 3.5 or 4. I very much remember that house show. I remember Billy Jack Haynes was on it. Dr. Death was on it for some reason, even though he never worked for the WWF. Paul Orndorff was on it. Actually, me and my brother at that house show, almost got backstage. We just walked through some we walked through some doorway in the arena, and we were backstage, and some wrestlers started walking towards me. They looked huge. They scared the fuck out of me, and I ran out of the backstage area because they scared the F out of me and said, "Hey kid, get out of here." And I just ran, and it scared the shit out of me. But that was pretty awesome as a tiny kid to see 3 giant wrestlers walking up to you. It was pretty awesome, and left a memory in my brain. I still remember that to this day, being at that house show in '87. It was great memories. That's all I got to say. And I became a major fan when I was 3.5 years old in '87, when I was watching Superstars, and for the first time, I saw Hulk Hogan was the first guy on the screen that I saw pop up on WWF Superstars. So the minute the second I saw Hulk Hogan on my TV screen, I was hooked. Absolutely hooked. Hooked, line, and sinker. I was a wrestling fan for life. Ever since, in 1987, at 3 or 4 years old, I saw Hulk Hogan, the WWF World Champ at the time, on my TV screen. I don't know, it was something about Hulk Hogan as a kid. When I first saw him, it made me a wrestling fan, and I'm still a wrestling fan to this day. Anyways, going to talk about 1987, the year in wrestling. This is part 1. I'm going to be talking about WWF and the NWA only, because I don't got enough time to talk about the AWA and what was going on, or in WCCW. In the AWA, I believe Nick Bockwinkel was the world champion still, and later on, I don't know the date right now, but Kurt Hennig beat Nick Bockwinkel for the world title and became the AWA champ in '87. And he had a lot of epic matches with Nick Bockwinkel. Did Kurt Hennig, few draws, a few matches that went the hour time limit. Those were great matches back in '87 from the AWA. Nick Bockwinkel versus Kurt Hennig. Some great matches they had against each other. And eventually Kurt Hennig, young star, like he was like a rookie in wrestling, but I'm sure he was wrestling before '87. He was probably in wrestling a couple years, but beating Nick Bockwinkel and getting the AWA world title was a big step to his career and launched him. And then in '88, or late '88, or the summer of '88, Kurt Hennig went to the WWF and became Mr. Perfect. Anyways, January 1987, Hacksaw Jim Duggan was signed by the WWF after working for Bill Watts in the UWF promotion and Mid-South Wrestling. Jim Duggan left Louisiana, left Bill Watts' company, and was signed by Vince McMahon and debuted in the WWF at WrestleMania 3. He came out, I believe, and during the Killer Bees Iron Sheik Nikolai Volkov tag team match, he did a run-in at the end. I believe he attacked Nikolai and Iron Sheik with his 2x4, and they ran off. Then Duggan stood in the ring, got on the microphone, he did his "Oh!" and I'm sure started a USA chant. And ever since then, after making his debut at WrestleMania 3, after that, he feuded with Nikolai Volkov, and then they went into a feud, and I believe they had a flag match. And of course, Hacksaw Jim Duggan won the flag match. Other top shows that went on for WrestleMania 3 had 1 or 2 Saturday night main events were on the air. March '87, Andre, they had a 20-man battle royal, I believe. I think it was 20-man battle royal on Saturday night's main event. Andre the Giant was in it. Hogan was in it. Butch Reed was in it. Killer Bees were in it, I believe. Who else? Macho Man's brother, Leaping Lanny Poffo was in it. Honky Tonk Man was in it. Anyways, at the end, Andre actually threw Hogan out of that battle royal before their WrestleMania 3 main event match, and Andre won the Battle Royal on Saturday night's main event from March '87. Also on that show was Ricky Steamboat. Macho Man did a run-in. He was the Intercontinental Champ at the time. I believe he did a run-in after the match and dropped a big elbow on Ricky Steamboat. In the other matches on Saturday night's main event, I don't really remember. I think George the Animal Steel took on Macho Man in the opening match, and it was a DQ. Randy Savage running to the back. I think George still chased him or picked up Elizabeth and was carrying her or something. And then Randy Savage came back to ringside, took out George Steele with a giant chair that Elizabeth was sitting in at ringside. Anyways, now I'm going to talk about probably one of the biggest shows in the history of WWF and in the history of professional wrestling. No doubt about it, was WrestleMania 3. It had 93,000 people in the Pontiac Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan. Huge WrestleMania. One of the biggest ever since, WrestleMania was turning 3 years old. It was no doubt better than WrestleMania 1 and better than WrestleMania 2. The setup and the size of the crowd and the lighting, the production was absolutely amazing and looked great. And the production was awesome. The lighting, the ring looked great. The huge crowd looked great. Everything about WrestleMania 3 is, the event was epic. Everybody that's a old school wrestling fan or anybody that's watched WrestleMania 3 and that respects that show, everybody knows it was a epic show, epic pay-per-view event. You had one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time on there. It was for the Intercontinental Championship. Macho Man Randy Savage defending against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. What can I say about this match? All I can say is it was really epic. It was perfection. It was awesomeness. It was tremendous, very, very good match. All the near falls, all the false finishes in the match were great. Steamboat was coming back from being injured in a storyline. He's injured months earlier on Superstars. Macho Man came down to his double axe handle on the outside, drilling Steamboat in the back of the spine. Throat went into the guardrail. Steamboat, he was choking like he couldn't breathe. That was a great setup for their feud, and a great setup for the WrestleMania 3 match months later. And then Savage took the ring bell, came off the top rope, dropped the ring bell, dropped it right in Steamboat's throat, injuring his throat even more. They had to carry off Ricky Steamboat. They carried him out on a stretcher. He was acting like he couldn't breathe. Even now watching that, it was very believable that Steamboat couldn't breathe and was gasping for air because of what Macho Man did to him, pushing his neck into that guardrail and dropping the bell on his throat. That was a great setup for that WrestleMania 3 match. It was very well done. But it was the late 80s, and a lot of storylines in the late 80s in both WWF and the NWA they had more time. Storylines back then in 87, 88, 89, even 1990, they had way more time to develop their storyline and make it great. I mean, that Savage dropping a bell on Steamboat's throat, that was probably 4 months or 5 or 6 months before WrestleMania 3 in their big match. I mean, the late 80s, they had way more time to develop a storyline that fans could care about and would get into. And I mean, that the fans were invested in Steamboat versus Savage because they didn't know if Steamboat was healthy coming into the WrestleMania 3 match. Everybody knew what Macho Man did to him. They did vignettes where they had Steamboat's doctor talking about that he couldn't speak anymore and he lost his voice because his throat was damaged. Something was damaged in his throat from what Macho Man did to him. That was a great setup, talking to Steamboat's doctor. And they did segments and whatever you want to call it, vignettes or segments where Steamboat was trying to talk, getting his speech back, getting his voice back. That was cool. Stuff like that. And they just had way more time to get the fans and the people invested in storylines back in the late 80s. And I wish nowadays it'd kind of go back to them dragging out storylines longer, like, I don't know, like a Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar storyline. Everyone knows he's returning in July of this year, and I'm sure Brock will be coming after Rollins. Of course, Rollins won at WrestleMania. That was April or whatever, March 30th it was, whatever date WrestleMania 31 was. I don't remember. I think it was 30th or 29th of March. And you're going to have Brock come back in the summer, and whatever, 5-6 months later, I'm sure he'll feud with Rollins and chase the championship and chase Seth Rollins for the title. But anyways, I'm getting off track. I just wish nowadays they would give main and top storylines, I guess they would give them more time, like 6 months or 6 or 8 months to build a great story and to get the fans invested and to get the fans to care again. That would be pretty cool. They dragged on storylines a bit longer, but I don't think they're gonna, and it's not gonna change and go back to how long and how much time they used to give them to build a great storyline. Anyways, Steamboat and Savage match was epic. All the false finishes, all the you had drama in it. You had all the false finishes in it. You had all the near falls in it. It was exciting. The crowd was on the edge of their seat during the whole match. It was back when the Intercontinental Championship was important and meant something. The 80s, in the late 80s, the Intercontinental title, and into the early 90s, the Intercontinental Championship meant something. Not like today. They're trying to get it to mean something, but it's not mean very much when the guy that has it is out with an injury for 2 months. Anyways, the match, the only criticism the WrestleMania 3 Intercontinental Championship match has gotten was Ricky Steamboat has said in interviews many times that Randy Savage and him met in a hotel room, and Savage had the entire match planned out. From A to Z, he had a spot planned out, and he went over it with Savage ahead of time, like A to Z. Well, for example, A was lockup. Every Savage, Steamboat has joked about that in a lot of interviews and says, of course, I know, Randy, that we would start the match by locking up. But anyways, Savage wrote it down, had the entire match planned out, wrote every single spot, every single near fall, every single false finish Savage had planned out ahead of time and met with Steamboat. Had every single spot planned out, written down in a notebook, I believe, or if he didn't go from A to Z, he probably went from 1 to 500, and like, I don't know, probably number 100 on the list was Schoolboy or something like that, who knows. Anyways, Intercontinental title match, WrestleMania 3 was great. That's why it's one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. I did a WrestleMania top 31 matches list, and Savage and Steamboat, to me, on my list, I ranked it number 2 on my list because it's that great. And that match still holds up to this day if you watch it. Other matches on WrestleMania 3, top matches that I'm going to talk about. You had the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana in a 6-man tag against the Hart Foundation and Dangerous Danny Davis, the crooked referee. Jimmy Hart was at ringside. Pretty entertaining 6-man tag. And that's all I got to say about that match. It was entertaining. You had another entertaining 6-man tag midget match. Midget match along with 2 normal sized guys. You had King Kong Bundy and his midgets. I don't remember their names right now. And you had Hillbilly Jim and his midgets. I believe his midgets, one of them was a Haiti kid, a little black midget. And the other might have been Little Beaver. What was the other guy's name? The other midget on Hillbilly Jim's team, I think, was Little Beaver. And the other midgets, King Kong Bundy's team, I believe one was maybe Little Tokyo. If I got his name wrong, I apologize. And the other midget, I can't remember his freaking name. Lord Littlebrook. I think it was Lord Littlebrook was the other midget. Anyways, you had 4 midgets and King Kong Bundy and Hillbilly Jim in that match. It was entertaining. The end, Bundy, I believe, lost. I believe Hillbilly Jim went over, if I remember right, and pinned Bundy. After the match, Bundy body slams Little Beaver. I believe it's Little Beaver. He body slammed and dropped a big elbow on Little Beaver. That was funny as hell and very entertaining. That was a WrestleMania moment for sure. And then you had Jake the Snake with Alice Cooper, legendary rock star Alice Cooper from the Detroit area, take on the Honky Tonk Man. Honky Tonk Man, when he came in the company in '86, he was a babyface, and he did not get over at all. I guess WWF thought he'd get over as a babyface. He did not at all. Fans hated him. In '86, they really hated him, and they booed his ass out of the ring and out of the building. So that was the right move in '87 to turn Honky Tonk Man heel. Anyways, he was a heel versus Jake the Snake. I don't remember who went over. I think Honky Tonk Man won. And then at the end, I do remember Jake the Snake held down Jimmy Hart, and Alice Cooper was coming towards Jimmy Hart with a snake, and Jimmy Hart probably pissed himself. I would too. I hate snakes. I don't want someone coming up to me with a snake at all. It'd freak me the F out. I would probably run. I'm not a fan of snakes at all. And people that do own snakes, you're fucking insane. And you're crazy. But you're tougher than me because I am afraid of snakes. And I always will be. I don't like them. Well, other matches on WrestleMania 3, you had the Tom Zink, formerly the Z-Man. In WCW, Tom Zink was tag team partners with Rick Martel. They were the Can-Am Connection versus Bob Orton, Cowboy Bob Orton, and Don Morocco was the first match on the show. Other matches, Hacksaw Butch Reed, not Hacksaw, well, he was Hacksaw Butch Reed, but on the WWF, he was the Natural. Butch Reed took on Coco Beware in a match. Other matches, you had the Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine took on the Rougeau brothers in a tag team match. That was entertaining. Dream Team left. Brutus Beefcake, they left his ass in the ring and they dumped him, I guess. Kicked him out of the Dream Team. Then he turned face later on in the show. And he came out and cut the hair of the next match he was involved in. Roddy Piper, it was supposedly his retirement match. It was his last match ever. And, well, it was his last match for 2 years, because after WrestleMania 3, Piper went on to film the great movie They Live, epic classic They Live. I love that movie. Piper's in it, and I guess that's why he said he was retiring, because he knew he was going to film They Live. And Vince McMahon actually tried to stop Piper from going to Hollywood and filming They Live. Piper said in interviews recently on his podcast, or maybe a year ago he said it on his podcast, that Vince offered him more money to not do the movie They Live. He offered him more money to not go to Hollywood and do the film, I guess because Vince didn't want him to leave WWF and be successful. Vince has a big problem when guys want to leave and go somewhere else and have a different career. I think Vince has a big problem with that, and he's pissed off that Piper wanted to leave the family and go film a movie, but Piper said no to Vince. He didn't take extra money, and he basically said F you to Vince, and he went to film They Live, and I'm glad he left and went to film They Live, because Piper was great in that movie. Very entertaining movie. All the wrestling fans out there that follow me, if you've never seen the movie They Live, check it out. Buy it on Amazon.com. I'm sure it's under $10, or get it somewhere. Get it on Netflix. Check the movie out, They Live. I believe it's from 1988. It came out in 88, I think, maybe 89. Anyways, Roddy Piper in They Live. Check that movie out. If you've never seen it, it's fucking great. Anyways, you had Piper in his retirement match. versus Adrian Adonis. Adrian Adonis, his character for that time, that was ahead of its time. He had a gay type character, I don't know what to call it. He acted real feminine, he acted like a woman. He was a real fat guy. In '87, Adrian Adonis did not look good. He didn't look healthy at all. He looked awful. Looked like he could have a heart attack any second in the ring. He was really overweight, and he was not looking well at all. I'm just saying, he didn't look well, and that was sad. But it was an okay match, Piper and Adonis. It was okay. Piper won in his farewell retirement match. Brutus Beefcake was still at ringside, I guess, hiding under the ring or something, because he came in the ring, helped Piper. I believe someone put the sleeper on Adrian Adonis. Either Brutus Beefcake did it or Piper did it. I remember, I think Jimmy Hart was at ringside because he was a manager of Adrian. I believe they chased him off. He ran away, ran to the back. You had Piper and Brutus Beefcake in the ring. Adrian was passed out, and then they started shaving his hair, shaving his head. That was pretty cool and funny and entertaining. And Piper left the ring to a standing ovation. Well deserved. Rowdy Piper is an all-time great, an all-time legend in the WWF, WWE. Rowdy Piper is the fucking man. I'm a big Rowdy Piper fan. He's an all-time great. And then up next, not up next, but the main event of WrestleMania 3. The match that drew 93,100 plus people in the building. No doubt about it. The match that drew all those people was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. No doubt about it. Andre, his back was really bad. He was in a lot of pain before the match, but he got through it for Hogan. And you gotta respect Andre the Giant. He didn't have to put Hogan over if he didn't want to. If he didn't want Hogan to be passed the torch and put him over, he wanted to put him over. He was a giant. He could have refused in the ring easily. Andre the Giant could have refused to put Hogan over, but he did what's best for business. And Andre the Giant, no doubt about it, passed the torch to Hulk Hogan in that match at WrestleMania 3. Hogan beating Andre the Giant absolutely put Hogan over even more. And after beating Andre the Giant, Hogan in Hulkamania was running wild more than it's ever ran before. It was Hulkamania 24/7. People loved the guy after he beat Andre, and it just put Hogan over more as the face of the company, and it worked. Hogan beating Andre and body slamming Andre worked. And during that match, Andre didn't even know Hogan was going to try to body slam him. I believe that wasn't even a spot in the matchup that they discussed. Or I don't know if they even discussed the match ahead of time. Hogan claims he tried to talk to Andre about the match and to go through it and to go through all the spots and how they were going to get to the finish. And Andre would not discuss it. He just kept tapping Hogan on the back, saying, "It's alright, boss. It's alright. Don't worry about it." And so Hogan, I'm sure he was scared to death Vince McMahon says he said many times, and Hogan has said he was scared to death, and people have said backstage that Hogan was scared to death, and he was nervous, and he was sweating profusely because he didn't know if Andre was really going to go through with it and put him over. And you gotta respect Andre for doing that. I mean, he was in no condition to be in the ring. He was very much towards the end of his career in that WrestleMania 3 main event. He wasn't in good shape. He was in better shape in 85 than he was in 87. He was really overweight, and he was not looking well, and he shouldn't even been in the ring. But Vince talked him into coming to work WrestleMania 3, and he agreed because I guess he wanted to give back to the business that gave him so much. So that was really cool of Andre to put over Hogan like that. He didn't have to, folks. He was a giant. He did not have to put over Hogan. He could have refused very easily. Nobody was gonna make Andre do something in the ring that he didn't want to do, or job to somebody that he didn't want to job to. I'm sure Andre saw in Hogan, I'm sure he saw something and thought to himself, this is the guy, this is the new face of the company. Because before Hogan came in, Andre was the face of the WWF. He was there in 1980. He was working for Vince McMahon Jr.'s father. 1980, he was there. He was a big, huge star. He was a giant. Andre in 1980 worked Shea Stadium show, the Mets' former stadium, Shea Stadium. Andre worked a match against Hogan in 1980 before Hogan eventually came back in late 83 to WWF and returned. But Andre was a top star, top guy for WWF before Hogan even got there. And he was a top guy in 84 and 85. 85, Andre wrestled Big John Studd, WrestleMania 1. That was a top match on that show. WrestleMania 2, Andre won the Battle Royal in Chicago. That was a top match on the show. So Andre in the 80s, and still to this day, Andre the Giant, without a doubt, is still remembered as an all-time great and an all-time legend, because he's probably one of the biggest, not the tallest, but one of the biggest, larger than life characters in the history of professional wrestling. No doubt about it. There will never be another Andre the Giant ever in the WWE. The Big Show, yeah, he's big and he's done a lot of great things in his career, but Big Show is not Andre the Giant, and he won't even get to where Andre got in his career. Andre the Giant, all-time great, all-time legend. Hulk Hogan, all-time great, all-time legend. Andre didn't even know when Hogan picked him up and body slammed him. Andre didn't even know that was going to happen, and that Hogan was going to try to body slam him. Hogan did it somehow, some way. That was fucking insane. I don't know how Hulk Hogan picked up Andre the Giant. I have no clue how he picked up Andre. Looked to be 600 pounds, or at least 550. And Hogan picked him up, slammed him. That was an epic WrestleMania moment that will never be forgotten. At least by me, that moment won't ever be forgotten. And then he ran to the ropes, hit the big leg drop. 1, 2, 3. Hogan wins and goes over Andre the Giant in the record-setting, largest, biggest indoor attendance record. Record was set, 93,000 people. Hopefully WrestleMania 32 breaks that record and draws over 100,000 people. That would be epic. If they draw over 100,000 next year, I'm gonna be there. I'm going to that motherfucker for sure. I'm getting my ticket for WrestleMania 32 because there will be a record broken for sure. And there will be at least 4 to 5 top matches. Top 4 to 5 main events will be on WrestleMania 32. Can't wait for WrestleMania 32. But what's it? 10 months away? 10, 11 months away. That's a long time from now. There's a lot of wrestling shows to get through before WrestleMania 32's here. Anyways, now, after the biggest event in the business in 87, WrestleMania 3 was in the books. I'm sure WWF made millions, probably at least 2 million. Or back then, they didn't make as much money at WrestleMania as they do now, but I'm sure WrestleMania 3 for WWF as a company was a huge financial success, no doubt about it. It had to be. I don't think they gave away any free tickets for that WrestleMania. Well, I don't think they ever have given away free tickets for WrestleMania. Not like WCW used to give away free tickets to their pay-per-views when they couldn't sell they couldn't even sell probably 1,000 people to show up with their pay-per-views in the year 2000. I don't think WWF has ever given away, or WWE has given away tickets to WrestleMania. The name WrestleMania draws a sellout for itself, no matter what. Just by the name being called WrestleMania will always draw a sellout. Anyways, after WrestleMania 3, the company, the WWF, was fucking on fire, folks. It was on fire. It was bigger than it was before. Just after WrestleMania 3, things got bigger and bigger. The money pile kept rolling and rolling and got bigger and bigger and bigger. The pile of money got bigger and bigger. WWF, I'm sure, made a ton of money in 87. And then every year, of course, I'm sure every year they made more and more. Except in the 90s, early 90s, and 95 was not a good year for WWF at all. You had in, I believe, May Superstars taping. You had the One Man Gang showing up. The One Man Gang, former UWF World Champ, Mid-South Wrestling, whatever, it wasn't called Mid-South Wrestling, but it was called UWF after Mid-South. And he was the world champ. He feuded with Hacksaw Jim Duggan a little bit, and he was their world champ. But in May 87, the One Man Gang made his WWF debut on a Superstars, and his manager was Slick. Slick, I thought, was always entertaining, funny as hell. He was just entertaining. The way he talked, the way he would cut a promo, and the way he would dress. He looked like a pimp. It was just funny as hell, and he would even dance in the ring sometimes. That was also funny as hell. Anyways, my thoughts on the One Man Gang when he debuted. Great look. Hell of a look. He was a big man, big guy. He's over 400 pounds. He had the mohawk. He had his side of his head shaved. He had that mohawk. He had tattoos right here, both sides of his skull. 2 tattoos. That's fucking insane. Getting a tattoo on your head by itself. That's nuts. Anyway, it was one-man gang. Was awesome. I think he should go in the Hall of Fame next year. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. If Coco Beware deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, just about anybody that worked for WWF does. Put in one-man gang to the Hall of Fame. He deserves it. He has a great look. His WWF run from 87 to April of 1990. That's how long he lasted. And he never held a championship, but he was a good heel. He was a good heel when he came in. He worked with Hogan, and he was a guy. He came in basically to job and put Hogan over as a monster babyface that could beat anybody. I mean, One Man Gang was another monster for Hogan to beat. And I thought he had a great look. He never held a title, never got a big push from the WWF, but One Man Gang will be remembered by everybody. Hopefully, he's still remembered. And then you had July 4th, 1987. NWA held a Great American Bash from Atlanta, Georgia. Great American Bash. They held them in a lot of different states in 87. There was a Great American Bash tour. They had a tour. They had a lot of same matches. They did a lot of war game matches all over the country. Something like Dusty Rhodes has said in interviews, him and Arn Anderson have faced off and have started over 52 war game matches. Those two guys have started and been in 52 war game matches. I don't know if all those 52 war game matches were in 1987 all over the country. I'm not sure if they were, but July 4th, 87 was the first War Games match at the Great American Bash 87. You had the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair, J.J. Dillon was in it, Lex Luger was in it, part of the Horsemen, and Arn Anderson was in it, against Dusty Rhodes and the Super Powers. I believe they were called the Super Powers or something like that. Dusty Rhodes, the Road Warriors, and Paul Ellering, their manager, was in it. Great match. I love the War Games match. I've always been a fan of the War Games match. It's a great concept, great idea, a fucking awesome idea to have 2 rings, have a cage down, roof on top, cage around both rings, just have 4 guys, 4 on 4 or 5 on 5, beat the living shit out of each other in a cage. That's a great match, and it's a great way to end a feud between 8 guys or 10 guys. It's a great match. I wish WWF would have at least one War Games match. I mean, great idea, but Vince McMahon does not like the NWA, WCW type gimmick matches. He doesn't like War Games because it was a WCW, NWA, Dusty Rhodes idea. I guess that's why we'll never see a War Games in the WWE, because it was not created by Vince McMahon himself. That's stupid. I think in War Games is a draw, and it's money. If WWE put it on a pay-per-view, that would be a huge match, and it would draw a ton of new subscribers. Would probably sign up for the network if they knew they were going to see a War Games match. You could probably get an extra 200,000 subscribers if you put on a War Games match on pay-per-view in the future. But I really doubt WWE ever will, at all, ever, put on a War Games match. Because you look at their history, and I know the entire history of the WWF, WWF, and the WWE, and they're never gonna put two rings next to each other in an arena. I really doubt they ever would want to do that. Vince wouldn't want to do that, and he would not want to put on a War Games match because he didn't create it, and he has a fucking problem with stuff that he didn't create. Anyways, maybe we'll get a War Games match in NXT in the future because Triple H runs it. And I heard from reading stuff, Triple H is a big fan of the War Games match, and he actually tried to get a War Games match on a WWE pay-per-view a couple years ago, or in 2005 or 4, and Vince McMahon he won't do it. He won't listen to Triple H and put on a War Games match. So I doubt we're never going to see a War Games match in WWE or in NXT, because after all, Vince owns NXT also, because it's under his company still. Other matches at Great American Bash 87, you had a taped fist match. Taped their fists up. Dr. Death, Steve Williams versus Dick Murdoch in a taped fist match. That was pretty cool. You had a NWA US title defense. Lex Luger was a champ, and he was against Nikita Koloff in a cage for the US title. That was an entertaining match. There were a few more matches on the Bash 87 that I see in front of me, but I haven't seen them because they're not on the DVD that I own of the Bash 87. They're not on the DVD I have, so I'm not going to mention them. Another match on the DVD, the Fabulous Freebirds, Terry Gordy, Buddy Roberts, and Michael P.S. Hayes versus Manny Fernandez. Who else? Let me get this. Ivan Koloff, Manny Fernandez, and Rick Steiner took on, not Rick Steiner. Manny Fernandez, Ivan Koloff, Paul Jones took on the Fabulous Freebirds, 6-man tag team action. The crowd was hot as hell for this match. I guess they love the Freebirds in Atlanta, GA. I don't even know if that was their hometown or if Michael Hayes was really born in Atlanta, GA. Like the song Bad Street USA sings, that they're from Atlanta, GA. Anyways, they were super over in the Bash 87. It was in Atlanta. The Freebirds were super over. Got a huge pop. Michael Hayes was getting a goddamn pop for just shaking his hips and doing the moonwalk. People were popping just for that. Also, Terry Gordy, when he got tagged in, was delivering the right hands, knocking the other guys on their ass. Right hands after right hands. They were popping huge. They loved Terry Gordy. Another match in a cage. NWA world title. Ric Flair was the champion. And he was let's basically say it like it is. He was the leader of the Four Horsemen at the time. And he was NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Took on Jimmy Garvin. Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. And it was a 30-minute, it went 30 plus minutes. It's a hell of a cage match. I watched it, I think last summer. It's a great, hard-hitting, straight-up, impact, hard-hitting, kick-ass, steel cage match. Jimmy Garvin beats the living shit out of Ric Flair's chest, chopping him hard as hell. Super vicious, brutal, violent chops he delivers to Ric Flair's chest. Flair, of course, like every cage match Flair was in, he gets his head thrown against the cage, and he blades, and he bleeds a lot. His white hair turned red. As always, Flair loved to blade himself and bleed, and I respect that. Nature Boy Ric Flair, one of the greatest world champions in the NWA and the WCW, and one of the greatest world champions in the history of professional wrestling is Ric Flair. I love the man. Fucking noise. Thought someone was about to break in my door. Anyways, I don't know what that was. Probably a cat. What was I saying? Ric Flair, in my opinion, in my top 5, one of my favorite wrestlers. He's in my top 5 of all time. If there's a wrestling Mount Rushmore, no doubt Ric Flair is on mine. He's great. And Hogan also is on my Mount Rushmore. And think about it, 1987, Hogan started January 87. This was his second year holding the WWF Championship. He won the title, I think he won it 84. January 84, he won it. So, January 87 was his 3rd year being the WWF champion. No, I don't see anybody ever again in the WWE. I don't see anybody holding the championship for 4 years like Hogan did. He held it from 84 to January or February 88. Nobody ever again is going to hold a title for 4 years, a world title for 4 years. The only guy that's close recently right now is Mark Briscoe in Ring of Honor. I believe Mark Briscoe's the champion. I don't think it's Jay Briscoe. I think it's Mark. Mark Briscoe is world champion right now for 2 years. Has been champion for 2 years. That's a really long time. And I don't think we're ever going to see another champion go and hold the title for 3 to 4 years. I just doubt we'll see that happen again. Hogan held it 1987 January. When the year started, he was champion for 3 years, people. 3 fucking years. That's fucking insane. But it's also great because of the time. Hogan was the right guy at the right time. He was the face of the company. He was the top fucking guy in the WWF. So to me it makes sense that he held the title 4 years. and he didn't lose any. The only matches that he was in that he didn't even lose, but they were disqualifications in the 80s. He was in disqualifications and probably countouts, but he didn't lose the title. The only time that I believe Hogan jobbed was in 1990 when he jobbed and put over Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6. That's the only time I can think of that Hogan has jobbed for the first time. First time he jobbed was to Warrior, I believe. Anyways, Hogan started 87, the world champ in WWF. I believe Nick Bockwinkel was the world champion, the AWA world champion WCCW. I'm not sure who it was because that was a Texas promotion and I never saw it. I never watched it or saw it living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I did not see the WCCW until I was a late teen and into my 20s, and I saw a lot of WCCW. Anyways, I don't know who the WCC champion was. I believe in 1987 Rick Rude held the WCCW title, and Percy Pringle, known as Paul Bearer. For you people that don't know, Percy Pringle was Rick Rude's manager in WCCW, and Rick Rude, I believe, was their world champion in 87. I think. Maybe it was 86. He was their champion, but I don't know. In 86, Rick Rude showed up in the NWA for a little while, a couple months. Rick Rude was in the NWA, and I believe he's even a NWA Tag Team Champion in 86, I think, with Manny Fernandez. I could be wrong about that. Anyways, Rick Rude later on in 87 would sign and debut in the WWF, and that was good for him in his career because he wasn't going to become a top star going to the NWA in 87, that's for sure. All the guys that wanted to be mega stars and the guys that became mega superstars worked in the WWF in the late 80s, and good for them. I hope they all made a ton of money, and a lot of them are no longer with us, and that's sad as hell. Guys like Hercules Hernandez, later on he was just Hercules, he's passed away. Adrian Adonis passed away. Dino Bravo was murdered, I believe. I don't know. I think he's murdered by mafia guys breaking in his apartment, breaking his front door, shooting him to death. They shot him up, he was sitting in a chair, and Dino Bravo got a lot of bullet holes in him. He was murdered. Very sad. That sucks. Dino Bravo, Hercules, Adrian Adonis, who else? Big Boss Man was in the late 80s. He's passed away. Rick Rude passed away. Very tragic. I loved Rick Rude. He's great on the mic, and he's a great worker and wrestler. Rick Rude is really missed. I really hope they put Rick Rude in the Hall of Fame next year. Rick Rude should already be in the goddamn Hall of Fame. He was fucking great. And he is great. You can watch a lot of Rick Rude matches on the WWE Network for $9.99. People, check out Rick Rude matches. He's great. Who else is passed? And from that was around in 87. Kerry Von Erich from the Von Erichs. He passed in 93, I believe. Yeah, 93. I think he killed himself. Could be wrong. What year he killed himself? Kerry Von Erich was around in 87. He's no longer with us. A lot of the Von Erichs there's no Von Erichs left except Kevin Von Erich. He's the only survivor of the Von Erichs. That's tragic as hell. Trying to think who else that was around in 87 is no longer with us. Oh man, tragic as hell. Macho Man Randy Savage, no longer with us. That is just a tragedy how he died. Very tragic. Loved the Macho Man. Loved his character. Loved his interviews. He was great on the mic. Macho Man Randy Savage was the total package. He had it all. He had the wrestling skills. He had the in-ring work. He had the mic skills. He had Elizabeth. He had the costumes. He had the epic robes. He had the voice. Ooh, yeah! He was epic. Macho Man character will live forever. People never forget the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and they shouldn't. He's an all-time great. And if you don't respect and like what the Macho Man did in his professional wrestling career, there's something fucking wrong with you. You are fucking ill if you don't respect what the Macho Man did in the ring and in his promos. He was epic. Ooh, yeah! Love the Macho Man. Anyways, I believe Rick Rude debuted for the WWF. Let me check. July 87. July 1987, Ravishing Rick Rude debuted in the WWF. I believe I don't know if it was on TV, if it was on a Superstars of Wrestling, I'm not sure. But July 87, Rick Rude debuted. I believe before that, he worked for WCCW for a short time in 86. He was in the NWA, I know that. Anyways, I just went up to July 87 for now. This is part 1 of the year in wrestling, 1987. I just went from January. The champions from January, Hogan. The British Bulldogs, I believe, lost the tag team titles to the Hart Foundation in I think it was a January Saturday Night's main event. January 87 Saturday Night's main event. British Bulldogs lost to the Hart Foundation. I think it was in 87. I hope I'm right. Anyways, Hart Foundation were tag champs. Macho Man was Intercontinental champ. And Hogan was WWF World Champ. NWA, you had Nature Boy Ric Flair was the World Champ. I don't know, before July, I don't know who was U.S. Champ. I don't have that in front of me. I know Luger was U.S. Champ in July. And the tag champs on the Bash 87, it was the Midnight Express. I believe were the U.S. Tag Team Champions. Took on the Rock and Roll Express. Great, legendary tag team feud in the NWA. Started in Mid-South Wrestling. Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express. They had great, tremendous, epic, fun to watch tag team matches. those two teams had with each other. Jim Cornette, legendary manager, was the manager of the Midnight Express for years and years. They were tag team champions many times. Rock and Roll Express 5 times. NWA tag team champions. Anyways, US tag champs versus NWA world tag team champions. I believe Rock and Roll Express were the world tag champs. Let me just look this up. Yes. Rock and Roll Express were the world tag team champions of the NWA at the Bash 87 from Atlanta, July 4th, 87. Took on the US tag team champions, the Midnight Express, Sweet Stan Lane, the second member of the Midnight Express, after Loverboy Dennis Condrey left and went mental in his head and just left and didn't answer any phone calls and didn't show up to any events. So Stan Lane took his place in the Midnight Express, and I enjoyed that team very much. I thought Sweet Stan and Bobby Eaton were the best team and the best. They worked the best together, and they were the best Midnight Express team that was around, in my opinion. They were the best. Sweet Stan and Bobby Eaton were the best Midnight Express team. Anyways, this match ended in a DQ because I believe both titles were on the line. US tag titles and world tag titles were on the line. Ended in a DQ. It was a fun match. I believe it went maybe 12 or 10 minutes. It was pretty fun, but that's all I gotta say about it. Anyways, I named a lot of the matches that were on the Bash 87. This video's going on too long. Rick Rude, as I said, debuted for the WWF July 87. Rick Rude came in to the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, and also One Man Gang in May 87 came in to the WWF. January 87, Hacksaw Jim Duggan came in to the WWF. 3 top guys right there. 3 top stars in the 80s. And of course, out of those 3 guys, in my opinion, Rick Rude was the best out of the 3 of those guys. Anyways, this video's gone on too long, and when I've gone overtime here, so I'm gonna end it now. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back with 1987 Part 2 a week from now. I will put it on my channel. Follow me on Twitter at TNA WWE Guy and at NXT WWE Guy. If you want to follow me, go ahead. If you don't, I don't care. Anyways, bye for now. Peace out, everybody.